Welcome back to Cocktail Hour. I am super excited to see you guys. This is actually my second cocktail hour of the day. We just had another one with a corporate client right before this, and it was fun, but you guys are my tribe, so I am super excited to see you. We have muted everybody as usual. If you're not muted, please mute yourself, that way we can hear. But as you know, we want you to participate. So if you have a question or if you want to participate in the conversation, all you have to do is click on the reaction button and raise your hand. So once you have your hands raised, I have two co-hosts who will unmute you, or if you want to put a question in the chat, they will ask the question. So for those who are new, we have two amazing people with us. First of all, we have Isola Woods. Isola is a regional manager for Drew Estates. You guys know I call her a cigar savant. Can you guys see me, because I just lost you? Israel, can you see me?
I can see you. I'm sharing the screen for Isola.
Okay, cool. Okay. So if you have any questions about cigars, Isola is here to answer them, and she is also a wine and a cocktail enthusiast. Next, we have Israel Green. You guys know Israel. Y'all love Israel more than you love me. Everybody's always asking for Israel when he's not around. Israel is a motivational speaker and a leadership coach, and all around great guy, and the two of them volunteer every week to help me do Cocktail Hour. All right, so for those who are new to Shall We Wine, my name is Regine Rousseau. I am the founder and CEO. Prior to COVID-19, all of the work that we did was client-facing. Once the shelter in place was executed, we transitioned to a virtual platform, and this is how Cocktail Hour was created. So I always make this announcement because many of you have been responsible for Shall We Wine staying in business during this crazy time. So how have you helped? Most of you have sent me corporate referrals. That is huge. So we do this same platform that we're doing tonight. We do this for our corporate clients. So if you're working from home and you want to do something unique for your team, please send me an email and I can send you a proposal and some ideas of how we can create a virtual experience for your team. The second thing that you can do to support us is you can follow us on social media. I have a goal of reaching 5,000.
Leave it on the counter.
Okay, someone has their, someone needs to be muted, because
I got it.
Is that you, Israel? Because I can't see anything. My screen is completely.
Nope, I've got them. You're good.
Okay. So second thing I need you guys to do for me is to please follow us on Instagram and Facebook. And Israel has just put up our Instagram handle. Okay? Israel, can you put me back on the screen, because I can't see anything. Yep, something's going wrong. Give me a second, let me fix it. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. All right, here we go. Nope, I've lost you guys again. Okay, you guys can see me. I can see you. Okay, great. All right, so I am super excited to have Andre Mack with us today. Y'all know for the past 3 weeks, once he said yes, every week I've been like, do not miss this cocktail hour because Andre is phenomenal. So before I turn it over, I just want to tell you a little bit about Andre. I sent you his bio, but I want to, y'all know I like to speak from the heart. So Andre is a sommelier. He is a restaurateur. He is an author. He is an entrepreneur. We have his social media handle. Give him a follow. Isola's also going to put it on in the chat. But last week, the way I described Andre, and I mean this in all due respect, everything about Andre is delicious, okay? His wines are delicious. His book is delicious. His brand is delicious. I wanted to talk to him because I personally cannot think of a brand that is more authentic. Every time I see Andre, he shows up as himself, and he does this amazing job. So I am honored, I am excited, and I invite you all to participate in this conversation. Andre, before I turn it over to you, the first thing that we do after I make my long announcements is we open a bottle. So I know that some of you have bought both the Rosé and the Pinot Noir. We're going to start with the Rosé, but a lot of you called me and asked me about where to find this product. So we want to throw up 2 poll questions. Israel, can you throw up the first one? So I'm just curious, prior to this event, had you ever heard of Maison Noir, and had you ever heard of Andre? So please answer that poll for me. We're trying to gauge where you guys were able to find the bottles. We'll have one more question. Oh, I guess I have to answer to him.
And we'll give it about another 20 seconds. All right, we have the results.
Okay. Oh, wow, 43% yes, 57 no. Okay, great. Is it time for the second poll yet? Because you know I'm always off script, Israel.
Yep, it's time.
Okay, so we have one more question for you. I had to pour earlier. I need a sip. It's been a day. So please put up the second question. So, okay, which did you purchase for tonight's event? The Rosé, the Pinot Noir, both? I couldn't find the wines, or I came for the interview and I'll try the wines later. Please let us know.
And we'll give it about another 30 seconds.
Woo! Yes, sir. I really wanted to open this bottle earlier today, but Andre, I wanted the table to look good, so I was like, I'm gonna wait. I waited.
All right, poll is closing.
Okay. Rosé, Pinot Noir, could not find the wines. Okay, awesome. Well, Andre will thank you himself. A lot of you bought both or one of the wines, so thank you for your support. So Andre, I'm gonna sit down today. I usually stand up. I'm gonna sit down because I have so much stuff I want to talk to you about. You're gonna be like, she's asking me too many questions, but that's okay. That's why you're here. Andre, welcome.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Just trying to take calm down. I had a shot of whiskey. It was a long day today.
I hear you. So let's delve into the rosé, and then I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. So everyone received your bio and a link to your website, but I want to hear a little bit about your journey before I go into like my really deep questions. They're deep, Andre. So be prepared.
I mean, I guess just in a quick overview, I worked in restaurants most of my life, all throughout college, and I think, restaurants are pretty transient in that way. Like everybody's gone on to bigger and better things. And I think after school, I thought I was going on to the bigger and better thing, and I was working in finance. And it wasn't what I expected it to be. I had most of my life interacted with people. There was something about instant gratification, being able to walk up to a table of strangers and kind of turn the tides and be able to introduce them into something new. And I really liked that part of it. And I think much later, the wine aspect came along, and, that came from watching old episodes of Frasier that I decided that I wanted to have wine in my life. And not necessarily that I thought I was going to like build this company and do all this other stuff. And so I just wanted to have wine in my life. And, you know, I think like a lot of people here, you know, wine kind of catches you that way. You know, we talk about it being, you know, it biting you, right? You know, you fall in love with it head over heels. And I totally did. And so I worked at some pretty famous restaurants that you all might know. I worked at like McDonald's. I worked at Red Lobster. None of them, and they were all kind of shitty. But after college and after working in finance, I started to work at better restaurants with better wine lists, that kind of thing. I found myself working for the chef by the name of Thomas Keller. I moved to the French Laundry, and I worked at the French Laundry. And then I moved to New York, unsight, unseen. I think it was like 2004. Something like that, pardon me. And I became the head sommelier, you know, at Per Se, at one of the most anticipated restaurant openings in the last 25 years in New York. And that was it. I had a really great time. And then, you know, I just felt that like, you know, I wanted to continue to learn about wine. And I felt like the only way to do that was to make my own wine. And I could scratch several other itches that I had. You know, one, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and two, I wanted to have some more creativity in my life. And then when I always thought about like what would I call it and all these other things, to me, you know, I was just a kid who grew up on hip hop. And if you talk to it, it's a generational thing. It's not even a, you know, at some point, you know, it may have been a racial thing or racial divide, that kind of thing. But what you realize is that a lot of people that I worked side by side with in the restaurant that were of the same generation, they adored hip hop too. Hip hop didn't become this world phenomenon, billion-dollar company only because we listened to it, right? And so that was always interesting to me. And, you know, I always, you know, made wine references, you know, rap references to wine and all those kind of things just throughout the day. You know, it made the day pass faster and funner. And I decided to quit. I think a lot of people, you know, that's considered one of the best jobs in the world for what you do. And a lot of people don't quit those jobs.
So, Andre, let me ask you a question. You kind of touched on something that I was going to ask you a little bit later, but since you brought it up, you are, and I mean this sincerely, like you always represent yourself and your brand rooted in your culture, right? And I think that that's not always easy for someone to do, to go out there and to combine wine with hip hop and to do it in a way that is so authentic and just and unapologetic. So I want to read something to you. I was going to do this later, but this came in my DM. And when I got this message, I was like, okay, this is something that I need to talk to Andre about. So this is an African-American woman. She sent me a message that said, hey, Regine, I was inspired by your interview on, it says Wine Spectator, but she meant Wine Enthusiast. I do agree that very few Black people, hold on a second, are publicly involved with wine culture. I started my company with the idea to bring people around my age group and college age people into wine by suggesting affordable wines with great taste for every event. By doing, she says, as a Black woman, I fear sometimes not gaining the following I would like by showing my face too soon. What I'd like to know is how soon should I present the face behind my business? I got this email or this DM, I think after the second time I text you and I was like, okay, I need you to come on. So I was surprised that a woman in her 20s would send me a message like this because I thought that we moved past that. So I'm just curious, like, how did you seriously, like, just say, I'm going to go out as me and I'm going to build this brand around the culture that I grew up in?
I just did it. You know what I mean? It was the only way I knew how to build it was to go out and tell my story, was to you know, I was a waiter. right? You know, I could walk up to a table of strangers. Talking to people wasn't hard for me. And I think for me, you just show up and you told your story. I wasn't worried about, never in any aspect of my life. I never took the time or decided early on in age that I wasn't going to concern myself why I didn't get shit, why people didn't buy something for me, or why I didn't get a job or anything like that, because it's too easy for me, I felt like it's too easy to fall in that trap and say, well, it's because of this, it's because of that. I just didn't get it. I just worked harder and I just moved on. I wasn't going to focus my energy on that because it would drive you crazy. It could make you mad. And instead of that, I just felt like I would just try to touch as many people as I can, right? You know, you count the no's. Eventually somebody's going to say yes. And that was an interest. So that question is interesting because I do remember there was an article in the Chicago Tribune about African Americans and about how they didn't want to reveal that they were actually owners of certain companies. And I feel that. I mean, I felt a lot of that, you know, and I still go through that. I mean, I want to say probably like a big one for me was maybe about 5 years ago. I had the opportunity to wrap 3 of my distributors in Nashville, in Tennessee. Our distributor, we were going to wrap their vans. So their vans that delivered all the wines, 3 of them were coming up and I was going to wrap them. And so I was doing the design for it. And I was like, oh, you know, I could put my logo, I could do all that. And then I said, you know, and I was like, well, you know, this is a cool logo. I should do like, it was a likeness of me with the lungs. And I stopped for a second. I was like, oh, wow, okay. I don't know, that might hurt me. But then I just said, I didn't get this far. Why do I give a shit? And plus you realize that, like, you see other brands, you're like, Charles Smith has a picture of him on it.
Right.
And he, you know, he's a client of mine, but still, like, and it was just that thought of like, he never had that. You know what I mean? He never had that internal dialogue on whether or not putting his face on something would actually, you know, deter people from buying it. And my thing is that I just roll with it. You know, I mean, even, you know, as an African American walk into a wine shop with the letters OPP on it for people of a certain generation,
right?
That could,
you know me.
Some people are like, you know, they have a problem with it. I mean, and less about that, I've run into more problems with Love Drunk than I have OPP.
Okay, so let's talk about Love Drunk. Where did you come up with that name and what were you thinking?
Love Drunk was just an ode to my restaurant career, you know, which was full of infatuation, lots of fraternization. I met my wife at work. But you know, it's kind of like this euphoric haze of like when you're in love, like you're like in your head, you're in the clouds. Like, was that this kind of thing let her okay? It's
Hey, Andre, you're breaking up a little bit.
Love,
Andre,
like when you're in love with someone.
Andre, can you go back? You're breaking up a little bit. Is
All right,
that
hold
just
on.
me? Is that just me?
Everybody?
No, it's not. It's Andre.
Okay, you're back. Did we lose him?
I think so.
I think he appears to be frozen.
Okay, I'll send him a text and let him know, and then I can take you guys through the tasting.
All right, is that better?
Oh yes, you're back. Okay.
Switch lines. No, so you know, it's just, you know, it's the Love Drunk is the way I describe, you know, the feeling of first love.
Okay. Well,
Did I lose everybody?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions in the chat. But Andre made Drunk in Love popular before Beyonce.
That is very true. This is Drunk in Love. Mine is Love Drunk. It is. This is LeBron and his wife. They love this wine. We actually installed a tap in their home. They have a tap in their home, and they have Love Drunk out of kegs that they drink.
Oh, wow. Well, this is beautiful. It's juicy. It's got really wonderful fruit. So tell us what you were trying to create, and tell us a little bit about some of the notes in this wine.
You know, what makes this rosé unique, there's several different ways to make rosé, but what's interesting about this wine that it is mainly Chardonnay, so it is mainly a white grape. It's about 23% Pinot Noir. So everything is vinified separately and then blended back together. So it's not a byproduct of any wine that we make. You know, when I talk to people about rosé, I like to explain to them that it is kind of like the Beaujolais Nouveau of summer, right? It is the first pressing. You know, you drink it, you have fun. You don't drink it next year. You drink whatever's fresh and whatever comes out. For me, everything about this wine has always been intentional. We took Chardonnay as the base because we wanted to make sparkling wine. So this project has always been an experiment in reverse engineering to make sparkling wine, which we will release this fall, I believe.
Woo! Wow, okay.
Excited about that, but like this is all from one single vineyard called the Highland Vineyard. This vineyard was originally planted back in 1974 by David Lett, considered the godfather of American Pinot, also affectionately known as Papa Pinot, God rest his soul, and another gentleman by David Corey. These actually come from vines that were planted back in 2001. And so there's two separate blocks that we've used for this particular wine. I think our first vintage of this wine was 2009. But for me, it's always kind of been like this, you know, Chardonnay gives it its structure and its base and this broadness. And then, you know, you get raspberry, you get a little bit of watermelon rind. Some vintages, it's more riper strawberry than, you know, this vintage feels a little bit more slightly underripe strawberries. But to me, this has always been great. It's got really great acidity. You accentuate acidity on the sides of your tongue. So if you start to salivate this wine, that means the wine is high in acid. But to me, it's always been unique. You know, there's not another rosé that's mainly Chardonnay, you know, outside of, you know, champagne sparkling. You know,
Paulette says that she feels like it seems to mellow out a little bit after once it's been opened and allowed to breathe. Is that correct?
Correct. Most wines will. Most wines will react to oxygen. You know, oxygen's kind of the enemy. So as soon as you open a wine, oxygen gets in and it starts to break down the wine. That's the reason why you would decant a wine. One of the reasons why you would decant a young wine is to really help break down the wine, the tannins and those things, to make the wine softer.
So Andre, someone asked, did you become a sommelier for credibility or to increase your brand? I think it was the other way around, right? You became a sommelier first and then you had a brand.
I didn't get into wine. I didn't get into on the winemaking side until much later. Okay. I started out as a sommelier. I was working at a steakhouse in Texas, and that's where I kind of caught the bug. And there wasn't. It was the Palm Steakhouse. They didn't have a sommelier position. They had a assistant general manager who was the wine buyer. But, you know, I noticed on my short time working for them that my knowledge surpassed his knowledge. All the staff members started to come to me for wine questions and answers. And so I started that way. And then I ended up, you know, so I went through the ranks. I did a whole bunch of competitions. You know, I was best sommelier in America. I was best young sommelier in America. I was runner-up best sommelier in North America. And so I did all those. I ended up working, and that's when I went on my journey. I spent a small bit of time at Charlie Trotter's in Chicago before going to the French Laundry. And then I spent about 4 years with Thomas Keller, and then I quit. I started, originally the name of my company was called Maison Noir, and I started that company in 2007.
Somebody asked which Palm restaurant were in Texas, Dallas or Houston?
San Antonio.
San Antonio, okay.
Yeah. It was that they opened them.
Someone wanted to know, what are the distinctive characteristics of the Willamette Valley grapes? Do you source your grapes from anywhere else?
So the Willamette Valley is pretty famous for Pinot Noir. It's starting to become pretty well known for its Chardonnay. We have our own Chardonnay symposium now. Pinot Noir is, you know, like I would talk a lot about, it is kind of the best of both worlds. It has that fruit that you associate with California, meets that terroir, tasted land of the old world, and they meet in this very glorious place called the Willamette Valley. So that's how I would really describe that. That's what we do well. That's what we're known for throughout the world is Pinot Noir. But it kind of straddles the line. It does have fruit, New World fruit, but it does have like old school dirt, right? And things that you associate with Burgundy, they kind of all mix together. Some people like to call it Burgundy with training wheels, but it's kind of coming into its own. I would say that most domestic Pinot Noir producers hold Burgundy as this beacon of light of which they aspire to make. They know that they can't make it because the soil is different, all these other kind of things, but it's something that the care and take that the Burgundian vignerons take is something that a lot of domestic producers like to emulate. And so I always like to talk about Oregon wines being very food friendly. And when I talk about that, it's high acid, low wood wines, right? So you want acid, acid's an amplifier, right? The reason why you put salt on food, lemon on seafood is to really crank up the flavors of a dish. It's like, you're out to cook out and, somebody's made the potato salad and you took a bite and you can't really taste anything. The first thing you generally reach for is salt. You reach for salt, you put salt on it, it amps up the flavor. It's the same thing that you do with lemon. And for me, I really wanted to make, wines that were condiments to food. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to make wines. I mean, we do make several different wines, ranging, I think $100, $150, single vineyard wines that we do, and that we do some fun experimental things and outlandish things with. But the bulk of what we do is, under $20 on a retail shelf, and meant to go with food.
Are those higher end wines under the Maison Noir label?
Yeah, we totally do. We have a Touche that's at Restaurant Danielle. It's at a lot of the Michelin 3-star restaurants here in New York.
Okay. So where do you come up with these names, Andre? Like, are you at home okay, go ahead.
No, I mean, I stopped doing drugs a long time ago, so it's not the drug. Isn't that?
You know where I was going with that.
So, I just feel like, I was coming from a different place, and I think for me to say Chateau Andre Mack, I mean, what the fuck does that mean to anybody?
Right.
Right? It doesn't mean anything. But if I said love drunk, that's something that evokes emotion in everybody. It makes everybody feel a certain type of way, whatever way that is.
Mm-hmm.
Andre Mack may not, right? But everybody has a relationship to that, and that makes them think of something else. And to me, I just felt like people resonate with phrases and names better than they did with just my family name. Like, to me, that was easy to do, right? You know what I mean? That's kind of like, whatever, that's like really easy. But also you're thinking about like, I'm the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, I got to do shit different, right? You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, hey, I'm like, okay, just Chateau Mack, that's it, And I just wanted to be playful for it. I don't know how many people here have ever dined at a Thomas Keller at one of his fine dining restaurants. He definitely has a sense of humor. And, we had a dish on the menu called Tongue in Cheek, which was tongue and cheek, right? You know what I mean? And he was very playful in that way. And to me, I wanted to be playful in my wines that way. I wanted the wines to speak for themselves, right? I didn't want to spend a whole bunch of money on packaging. I designed the label so it looked like my kid did it, right? It's very representative of who I am as a person in a lot of circles and who I was in the wine business, meaning that you can't really judge a book by its cover. Most of the time when I walk into a room, I'm underestimated, right? I'm the last person anybody thinks knows anything about wine. And to be frank about it, I like it that way. I have all the power, right? And so the same thing about the wines. They're very unassuming. And people think because they have these funny labels that they're not good. And they are. And I'll sneak them into any tasting, because I believe in it. And I think they're on par. And I think they over deliver for the price points that they're at. That I haven't raised the prices in almost a decade.
Let's talk a little bit about Stelvin enclosures, because that has come up in some of the other discussions. And then for those who don't remember, Stelvin are the screw tops. These are called Stelvin enclosures. So why do you choose to go with those versus traditional corks?
Um, it took a little bit of time. It wasn't the first two vintages of OPP were cork.
Mhm.
But it was always this thing too, always about like let's crack the top and let's get the party started. I mean, it is a weird thing too, right? Like that's the story I generally tell, but a lot of it too was a financial story. There were guys that told me that we can't pour your wine by the glass unless it comes in a screw cap.
Mm.
These were high volume places that meant something to me. I was starting my family, and I was out there. I had no money saved up. I had no money to do anything, and everything was really was bootstrapped. And here was one of a famous, very popular restaurant in New York City who said, we can't. And I gave it a long thought, and I kept thinking on about it. And it's funny. It's actually Stelvin closure costs more than cork.
Are you serious?
It costs more. The bottles cost more. So overall, it just costs.
Oh, wow.
It does. So I just felt like let's just put everything in Stelvin. And I mean, these are wines that are meant to be enjoyed now. I mean, granted, you can drink OPP 5 years in, 10 years in, but these are really wines that are meant to be drank young and fresh. And so that's been the defining decision on that. I think there's horseshoes and hand grenades. So everything that's in the graphical kind of label we call our everyday luxury wines, and the one in that is horseshoes and hand grenades that falls under that actually still has a cork in it.
So a lot of people might not know that you are an artist. You are a graphic artist. So you're designing these labels yourself still, correct?
Correct. No, I mean, I started a graphic design firm in 2009. So a lot of people don't know that. But yeah, I mean, we have a graphic design firm. We do design for tons of people.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
How many, is it all wine labels, or are you working with other industries as well?
We branched out and done some, the wine business, I took some of, I stepped back a little bit because I felt like, why would I help the competition? Right. That was kind of my thought. Oh, you just need to raise your prices, right? That was the fix, the fix there. No, I was on retainer for Palm Bay Imports for like 7 years or something like that. You know what I mean? Like we've done a lot of work. I mean, Charles Smith, Charles Bueller, Joel Gott, like we've done lots of different work. We do the graphic design for like t-shirts for like all kinds of different clients. We've done tons of stuff. I mean, it's a real business.
Do you still have a t-shirt line, or did you at some point?
We still do t-shirts. It's
okay.
It's probably the most profitable business that we have.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, before we get into the Pinot Noir, Israel, are there any questions, or Isola, any questions that I missed at all? Anybody want to jump in?
Yeah, we do have a couple that are in here.
Sure.
Just kind of going back up. What is the process of getting your wines in stores that currently do not carry them?
It depends on where you're at, but a lot of that is going to the store and requesting them. Sometimes you have to request them several times. Just depends, maybe what I think also what people have to understand is that, yeah, it is a business, but people have relationships with people. They might have a strong relationship with someone else in that price point that they may not carry my wine or actually put it on the shelf, but that doesn't mean that they won't special order it for you. We are distributed in almost every single state, I believe, at this point. Maybe we're in 48 states, maybe it's 48, maybe it's 47. We're in 22 countries. We make over 60,000 cases of wine a year. So the wines are out there. It just, like I said, it just depends. And I would just say where that person is. And I mean, I don't know where they're at.
Okay. Is climate changing having an impact at all?
Absolutely. Climate change, global warming, whatever the hell you want to call it, it's a real thing. And, all you have to ask is anybody who works in agriculture. The earth is a lot warmer place, and that definitely has had an effect on our wines. I think the Willamette Valley, I think we turned 50 years about maybe about 4 years ago, 5 years ago. We've seen, 2012 was it wasn't the hottest ever, but that was like a great vintage. 13 was hot, but 2014 was the hottest year ever. Then 15 came, that was the hottest year ever. Then 16 came, that was the hottest year ever. So, it has changed. I think, for those couple of years, Oregon wines were going through an identity crisis. It's when you think about the weather there, it's gray, it's dark. The summers were very beautiful when I started going there in 2007. So it never really got above 88 degrees. I think 2016, it was like 105 degrees during the summer. So it's really hot. It's starting to get really hot, and so that definitely changes the styles of wine. I mean, especially for people who just they don't just pick on bricks. Maybe they pick on dates or whatever their process is. But that has changed the wines. A lot of the wines, are more alcoholic, more dense, bigger in style. And then 18 happened, and now I feel like they're back to normal. But it definitely has affected our growing season. Harvest starts when I first went. This was at 07. We were harvesting like the second or third week of October. And now, it's like September. September is a whole month before. It's no rain. You're wearing shorts. It's not cold. It's hot outside. It takes a lot of the tension out of, waiting for the clouds to break. So the grapes get to the right bricks level, and so you can go out and pick. You know what I mean? So, it was like this pendulum of like, wow, this feels really great. And it was less stressful in that sense of like wanting ripe fruit and getting your fruit to where you wanted it to be, versus before. When I first started, it was pretty nerve-wracking.
Okay.
So our friend Philippe is on the phone or on the call. Hi, Philippe, and he wants you to talk about the Cadillac commercial.
What about it?
I don't know, Philippe. What do you want to know? I lost you in the chat.
I've been kind of fortunate. Cadillac had approached me and said they wanted to shoot a commercial. It was forgot what the theme of it was for, but anyways, the interesting part is they didn't want to film in Oregon. So I spend 1 week a month in Oregon. I have a house in Dundee. I spend the summers out there with my children. And then, I'm probably there for harvest for about 4 weeks, 5 weeks, it depends. And so they didn't want to come out and shoot at the winery. They wanted to shoot in New York because it was part of some travel thing. So we ended up filming in New York, and I don't know. I just feel fortunate enough to be in the position to say, I always just wanted to be fortunate enough to be to decide for myself, to be able to be in the position to say yes or no. But, same thing with Microsoft. Microsoft came out to Oregon, filmed at the winery. I shot a commercial for them, just really kind of telling my story. I think, you don't see a lot of people that look like me in the business. And, I think that's one thing, but also I created a different culture around wine. And you see that now, my shit was like more reverent. I was like, fuck the establishment. Like, I can do whatever I want to do. And I did it.
Yeah.
You're not a cool wine brand unless you have your own t-shirts. Like all that shit I created. Like, you know what I mean? The stuff that you see in the natural wine movement, I was there, I was ahead of that movement, not that I won anything from that, but just speaking facts. Right. And so for me, I think, I just did something different, and I hope people just saw what I was doing and say, hey, I can do that too. And, and you see that now.
So that's actually a good point. One question, I think we have a young wine brand owner, Michael Davis might be on the call. But so when people meet you, they catch the bug. They want to become a winemaker. They want to have their own brand. What kind of advice would you give to a young entrepreneur who wants to do what you do?
I think you just have to figure out which part you like, right? Because there's many roles to have. Like, what are you bringing to the table? Are you talented. You just want, like, are you about the art? Are you about are you the entrepreneur? Are you in the sales part? Like, what part are you really excited about? Because you don't, one, you can't do them all, right? And you need to figure those parts out. And, you know, I think for me, what I ended up doing is that, you know, most people, they come up with, they go through these long things. I didn't do any modeling. I didn't incorporate, I didn't do any of that shit at the beginning. Right. I went out and show and proved. Like, I was like, people would want these, and I built the brand. You know, I had a friend of mine that was always like, hey, did you do this? Did you do that? And I was like, no, I didn't, but I got product to sell. I don't know. You know what I mean? You know, so my thing is like, be relentless. I mean, and I don't know where that person is. Are they don't know, are they completely on the outside of it, or do they have some foot in? Do they have some knowledge of it? And, you know, my thing is for me personally, I had more time than I had money. And fortunate enough, like, you know, I worked really hard, and I worked at a place where I met a whole bunch of influential people and that kind of thing. And the reason why I got to do this is because people believed in me, but people were very generous with their resources at the beginning. And people, you know, along this journey, what I really realized is that people invest in people. Like, you know, if they really believe in you, like, yeah, you come up with a business plan and all that, and all the fucking numbers and all that shit, that, you know, maybe they even look at it. But the fact is, people invest in people, and when they believe in people. And I was fortunate enough that people did that. And so, you know, I mean, I guess the biggest thing is to figure out what do you want to do? Do you want to be an importer? Do you want to make wine? All right, so where are you at? Do you have a desire where you want to make it? And then kind of keep going to that, but like always progressing, getting close to that. I would say work for someone else, because if you're truly into it, then you give everything, right? Because if you're into it, you know, they're paying you to learn, right? It's not a paycheck, right? You're there. You don't care about being there 16 hours a day, because ultimately someone's paying you to learn the business, right? Versus you learning it for free. So I don't know where that person is, but I would say be about it, be 100% in it. And,
yeah,
and
I'm sorry. I think we lost the last thing you said.
I said, or whatever that means. I'm not, you know, it's kind of a general question. I don't know, you know, I could probably answer it a lot better if there was more detail about the question.
Sure, I got it. I think, I don't want to put anything on you, right? But I can imagine that you've gotten to where you are without, I think you're humble, and, you know, you're telling us the story, but every time I see you, and we have had a few occasions to talk, you are always strategizing. So you're cool right now, but you are like one of the hardest working people, one of the most strategic people that I think I've ever had a chance to talk to.
Yeah, well, you know, I just feel like you're not going to outwork me. Right?
I know, no one is.
That to me, that was the kind of thing is that I just need to figure out what I was going to do. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of people on that journey, like, I don't know what, you know, when I first started, I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm supposed to be doing. Right. You know what I mean? Like, and you try to figure out, okay, so once I figure out what I'm supposed to be doing, I'm going to do it like it's nobody's business.
Right.
And so I think I was on that journey to figure out. To me, I just, you know, somebody the other day asked me, so how are you coping with this COVID thing? And my thing is, the cure has always been in the work. Mm-hmm. Right? Hey, you know, I might be getting evicted. I'm going to work. Right? You know what I mean? It's like, it's always work. Hey, you know, this, that, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm just going to focus. I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to go to work. You know, I've opened 3 businesses since this thing happened.
So tell us about, well, we want to talk about the Pinot Noir, but tell us about your restaurants.
I haven't even drinking my own wine. Who's drinking wine? Nobody's drinking wine?
I'm sorry, the conversation's so good. So I'm not going to open the Pinot Noir. Okay, I'm not going to open it because I'm saving it for next Friday. Where did he go?
I had to go off the screen. I'm trying to dump this wine so I can do it.
All right, so tell us about the Pinot Noir, and then I have a little bit, oops, wrong glass. I have a little surprise for you.
All right, so the Pinot Noir, to me, is this is quintessential Willamette Valley Pinot Noir. like I talked about before, it is the best of both worlds. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel here. This is my Bourgogne Rouge, if you will. This is everyday drinking Willamette Valley wine. So it has that high tone red cherry fruit. It's got really decent acid. There's like some underbrush, so like some earthy components to it. Yeah, this is Oregon Pinot Noir. This is quintessential Oregon Pinot Noir.
Okay, so Andre, I don't know if I don't know if you know this, but I have a book, and I don't know if I told you, but in my book, it's a book of original poems, and I pair each poem, okay, you know this, with a wine. So,
yeah, thank you.
OPP is in the book. So I'm going to read to you the poem that is dedicated to OPP, all right? You know me. Okay, so the poem is called That Brother They Called D. That brother they called D takes a humorous view on being ghosted. I paired this poem with Maison Noir OPP Pinot Noir. I love how this winery produces excellent wines, but doesn't take itself too seriously. When your lover goes ghost, you can either laugh or cry. Sometimes you have to laugh. OPP, Other People's Pinot Noir, is a bright, playful delight with pretty red cherry fruit and an earthy, even palate. The poem. I, divine diva, denounce desire, dented from Dan, Doug, and other dogs, till D-Day at dusk, detoured, that brother they called D. We dialogued deeply, discussing dogma, doo-wop, and disappointing daddies. You disclosed dreams, and I dared drown. As Diana and Duke duetted, we danced dirty, dictating delicious don'ts. Damn, dear, is that dick detachable? Doubled over with laughter, you dug deep into my darkness, discovered dungeons, and we drifted into daylight. You disclosed dreams, and I designed diamond. Disremembering, I, diva divine, went down, dangle-doted, and invited you to dine. So, did I seem desperate? You dashed on Delta, did not dial, disconnected, disappeared, and I dismissed. There's your OPP poem.
Finger snap, sorry, finger snaps. There we go.
So I love this wine. I love the name. Why OPP besides the obvious? So were you thinking about the song? Was it something about Pinot Noir that makes you think naughty by nature?
Absolutely not. When I came out to Oregon in 2007, a friend of mine who I had met through the restaurant, who was a movie producer, started to buy up some of the great vineyards in America. He bought a vineyard in California called the Occidental Vineyard, which Kistler made famous, and then he bought the Seven Springs Vineyard in Oregon, which everybody made famous, considered by many as one of the most consistent vineyards in all of America. Al McDonald was the owner with his wife of Seven Springs, and they were just farmers. They sold contracts, and so it was really the local wineries that actually that was their top cuvee. Their top single vineyard wine was Seven Springs. It's the one that sold the most. A lot of them had handshake deals, and when my friend came in, he basically stopped selling them all fruit. There were like maybe one or two that actually had a contract, and so when we first got out there, there was no winery. My friend didn't have a winery to make the wine in, so we leased space inside of another winery, and that's where we started to make. He started to make this first Seven Springs wine. I started to make my first wines from there, and then before the next vintage, his winery had already been built, and I was going to lease space inside of his place. And so what I did was, so the first vintage I did, Seven Springs was pretty expensive, and basically how I came to the game, it was kind of like being signed to a record label, it was really expensive in the end. The finished product was really expensive, and I made like 3 barrels in 07. and the wine's wholesaled at like around $75 a piece. So they were really expensive. We sold them all out to the top restaurants around the country. And you know, I still had to pick up like bartending shifts. I had left my job already to like pay my mortgage and those kind of things. And so the next year, before we were moving out, I bought 8 barrels of finished wine from the winery, the first winery that we're releasing space in. And so we used those 8 barrels and blended that wine in with the wine that I made from Seven Springs, that stuff that was $75. And I had always referred to those original 8 barrels as the other people's. And so when it came time to like name the wine, I just, you know, and so, you know, there were lots of things that I didn't know just because I ran a program, you know, because I ran a business inside a business per se, there were lots of things that I didn't know. You know, I didn't know that I had to, you know, so I had signed up for the bottling line to have my wine bottle, but I didn't have my labels hadn't been approved by the government. And they're like, dude, what are you doing? You can't put your name down here if you don't have label approval. And so at that point I was like, well, fuck, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I just said, you know what, this will just be a Band-Aid. I can make it work. And so I designed the label that we have now. I haven't changed it since 2007. So it has the OPP on the front. It's called, you know, so just a little tidbit. All wine labels have to be approved by the government. So you have to submit them and then they approve them. Another fun fact is that the actual back label that we consider the back label is actually the front label to the government. So that has to have all this certain kind of stuff on it. You know, the government warning can't be smaller than 2 millimeters. Like there's all kinds of shit that goes on behind that. So the back label is the front label. So the wine is called Other People's Pinot. OPP is just the acronym that's on the front, right? That's not regulated or anything like that. So we, you know, so it grew in this thing, you know, it started out as these 8 barrels that were other people's that I blended in with my Seven Springs wine to bring my cost down and to increase my margin. So I didn't have to pick up bartending shifts. And then it was kind of a hit. And then I was like, you know, I'm just going to keep the label. Like it's too much to change it. And we kept rolling that. So that was a 2007 vintage. 2008, I set out because I was leaving that whole situation that I was into. And then 2009, we came strong and found a vineyard source that we had been using, that I signed a contract that we had been using until 2013. And then 2013, that vineyard was sold. And then I found another source. And so we have a contract with them, and we've been at so, you know, OPP has been a single vineyard since 2013. And so that was the name. And, you know, then it kind of evolved in like, you know, there's lots of different people who have a hand in making it, from like Juan, who runs our bottling line, to his cousin, you know, to his cousin who is on our picking team, to like their nieces who are like nannies for our kids when we're there. You know what I mean? Like, and the whole idea is that a lot of these guys that, you know, that are like really the superheroes and behind the scene heroes, they actually can't afford a lot of the wine that they actually are a part of those teams and work for those companies. And so, you know, for us, you know, other people's Pinot has morphed and really into this homage to all the people that have a hand in along the line, and being able to make affordable Pinot Noir for everybody. And so that's why we've never really raised the price. You know, I haven't, you know, I think I raised it. It was like year number 11 that we raised the price by, you know, the case price, you know, our FOB price. But other than that, we haven't really raised the price at all.
I love that story. That's a lot better than Naughty by Nature. But okay, so I always try to go ahead.
I've gotten to know them. You know, I've gotten to know them. We're working on some stuff together, but I have gotten to know them through that whole thing. You know, and it's really funny. You know, it means lots of different things, which I didn't know. If you're from New Orleans, you know, it means Orleans Parish Prison, right? If you're from Canada, it means Ontario Provincial Police, which they have OPP on the side of the car. You know, but you know, it's a playful thing in that. And my thing is, it's always a play on words, right? It's a word play, always in action, and it's supposed to evoke some type of emotion. And so
it does. OPP always does.
Right.
Okay, so I am way, you know, I knew we were going to talk a little bit longer, so Everybody, please forgive me. I like to keep it to an hour, but this is too good. So there are two more things that we have to talk about before I let you go. The book. Andre has a book. It is called 99 Bottles. Of course it is. Great title. So tell us a little bit about the book. I have a great time with it because when I am just looking for a recommendation, I will just flip open a page and I'm like, oh shoot, I haven't had this. So tell us the story about the book. And you guys remember, take photos tonight, post it with the Shall We Wine hashtag. Tag Andre, and the best photo I will actually buy and send you one of these books. Okay, so tell us about the book, Andre.
Yeah, so I had been wanting to write a book. I didn't know what it was going to be. But, you know, I always felt like all the definitive books about wine have been written. You know, the Jancis Robinson, the Wine Bible, you know, Karen McNeil's Wine Bible, there's, you know, Windows on the World. There have been all these iconic books that have been written about wine. And so I thought that I would share my story. And maybe if I told them through the lens of 99 Bottles, it's more narrative heavy, story heavy about me. And along the way, you get to learn about wine. And so done in the fashion that I do everything, it's like a faux wine guide. So if you go through it, you know, it says, hey, what's Chateau Neuf Pop? You know, so it has these things in it, it'll tell you about it. I don't really believe in tasting notes. And so I like to have a lot of fun with that. So in the tasting notes, you know, we pair them with situations like, oh, hey, you know, this pairs with, you know, Thanksgiving dinner with like your relatives, right? You know what I mean? Like those kind of things. And so you have that. But, you know, basically it is part wine book, part memoir. It tells my wine life story through 99 bottles. And so generally speaking, when anybody mentions any of one of those 99 bottles, this is the story that pops into my head. You know, 1985 Chateau Reyes, I was serving that wine at Per Se the first day that we opened and the restaurant caught on fire, right? You know what I mean? Like, I'll never forget that. You know, just different things, you know? I mean, like, you know, some of the wines are like off the charts, 1922 Unico, like unicorn wines that like, but, you know, I didn't want to be, it's authentic to my story and who I am. It's not a flex. It just is what it is. And some of those wines, I think that, you know, I realize that some people will never be able to taste those wines. But then some of the other wines are like, you know, I mean, the first entry in the book is Old English.
Yeah.
Started. I mean, I have to.
That's real.
And so, you know, it just kind of takes you through my journey. And, you know, and ideally, you know, it's that it's inspirational in that way that like, that, you know, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you start with Old English 800 or the Tiger or whatever you call it. But like wherever you start, and then you finish with me making my first wine, you know, making my second to first wine, you know, my first wine from Oregon. And so it was just, you know, it's fun, it's lighthearted, it's lots of different stories. It basically documents how I got to where I got to, lots of behind the scenes, you know, by chance meetings, you know, just, you know, hey, I decided one day I read this magazine, I decided to pick up the phone and I called this guy. I called 3 people. And one of the people I called and I staged and worked for free at Charlie Trotter's. The next person I called, I left a message. We traded emails. I drove up to Houston. I went to work for him. I went to work the floor with him for one day. And at the end of that day, he offered me a job at the French Laundry. Awesome. And it was just, you know, so it talks a lot about the behind the scenes of like how I got there and how I said, you know, hey, I was really into this thing. It talks a lot about Fraser. You know, so you'll get to know a lot more about me, but you'll also get to learn a lot more about wine. Yeah. It's told in chronological order, so you can read it from cover to cover, or you can like flip through and say, oh, hey, this is something on Chateau Neuf Pop and read that, or this is something about Sauvignon Blanc. And so it's fun, it's lighthearted, it's, you know, it's meant to be that. It was fun. You know,
this book is very you.
I'd use voice dictation. And then, yeah, and we, you know, it went through a little bidding war and we sold it.
Awesome. Okay, so before I open it back up to everyone, I do 5 quick fire questions. You ready?
I passively mentioned working at the French Laundry. I did. I did. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Okay, so 5 quick fire questions. Number 1, what's your favorite movie?
Do the Right Thing.
Oh, I was expecting that. Okay, if you had to drink one wine for, I won't say the rest of your life because that's too bad. 1 month, one wine, what would it be?
One wine, 1 month would be Old German Riesling.
Oh, yes. Okay. If you had to live any other place, I know you're in New York, you're grounded in New York, where would you go?
Oh man, that's really interesting. You know, I really love San Diego.
Okay. Why? I'm just curious.
That's caught everybody off guard.
I know.
I don't know if my wife can hear me. She's probably cussing me. She's like, "Fuck that! I'm not going to San Diego." I didn't say you was coming.
Okay. If this is a great question, so think about this one. If you had to work harvest in one other place, not Oregon, where would you go? Anywhere in the world?
Burgundy. I've worked there several times. It's great.
You go back. Okay. And in one word to describe Andre Mack. Mack Daddy?
Tenacious.
Yes!
Tenacious.
I love it. I love it. Andre, it has been an amazing pleasure. I know I texted you so many times. I'm glad you could hang out with us. I'm going to open the floor up, or I feel like I don't even know what the virtual language. I'm going to open it up to more questions if you have time to hang out a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, any questions? Oh, Marcia just ordered the book. Lauren, hey Lauren. Lauren just ordered the book. Thank you, Lauren. Do the right thing.
It's crazy on sale too right now. So.
Okay, perfect. That's why I said I would buy somebody one.
If you guys want to send me your receipts, I'll send you a T-shirt.
Oh, awesome. Oh, wow. Okay. I want a T-shirt too. Any questions at all, Israel?
Let's see here.
Let's see, Desiree.
They need to have you back is a comment. So also we're getting a lot of comments here.
Wine tours. Someone wanted to know, are there winery tours?
Yeah, sure. If I'm not around, someone can show you around. We use a custom crush facility, so you're more than welcome to have a tour around there and come see that. Before COVID, we were getting ready to buy a place in Yamhill, but that's been on hold right now. But if I'm there, I can show you around. If I'm not there, one of my people can show you around.
Oh, you got people, huh?
Oh, how do you think I do it?
Can we order from Andre with the signature?
Yeah. So I'll give you guys the link. You know, so I bought a wine shop about a year ago. So there's autographed copies in that. So maybe I'll give you the link, Marcy, Marcy, Regine, and if you order from there, they're signed already, and I can personalize them there, and then we can ship them out from the shop.
Yeah, if you send me the link, I'll send a follow-up email tomorrow, and I can put in the link.
They're not as cheap as Amazon, so.
You said what?
I said they're not as cheap as the ones on Amazon, but we'll figure it out.
No, you deserve it.
It's not for me.
Oh, Kay just bought it from Amazon. Do you
Yep.
sell your wines direct to consumer, Andre? Because I felt like when I went on the website, I saw that.
No. Yeah, it's pretty robust.
Okay.
It's larger than most wineries, the percentage wise. But yeah, that's really, I built the brand that way and traveling. But yeah, we do sell quite a bit online.
So I think Pam said she just bought the book. Look at this. Andre, I need some royalties.
Somebody asked why I changed the name of my company. I've been in a legal battle with Mouton Rothschild for, I don't know, it was like 7 years, 8 years. and we finally decided to change it. I don't know if you out there, it was a situation of big bank take little bank, and I had very little money, so we changed the name.
Lauren Blair says you're a threat. Nice. Anybody want to talk about the book? Not the book, the wines. Any questions or what you guys think of the wines? Everyone's muted, that's why. You can unmute. Oh, I see thumbs up. Hey, Brian. The Perkins are here. Tina, hi. Tina, are you drinking the wines? Tina was ready. Tina was ready last week for this.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We've got Brian that has the horseshoe and grenade.
Oh, he has the horseshoes and hand grenades? Yeah, that's one of our wines. Yeah, that's our Syrah Cab blend.
Nadine said she couldn't find the Love Drunk in DC. She's going to order it from your website.
Okay, we can ship there.
Dina said, Cara, turn her on to Love Drunk. All right, so you can unmute. We're going to do the after party, that just means we hang out, we talk some more, and we drink. Brian says, talk about and Sons. Brian Duncan wants you to talk about and Sons.
Sure. Let's see. 2 months, was at the beginning of January of 2020, I opened an American charcuterie bar in our neighborhood right around the corner from, this is my studio here, my house, but right around the corner called And Sons. So it's all-American charcuterie, all-American cheese, and all-American wine from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And we had been open for 2 months. And we had to close down because of COVID, but also part of that, next door is another space we opened, And Sons Buttery, which we just opened about 3 weeks ago, which is our provision shop. So we sell cheese, and it's like a cheese shop with some provisions, and that's right around the corner. And then about 4 blocks down the street, I bought a wine shop about a year ago called Vineyard. So we're kind of laying roots in this area here, and we got the makings of a little empire happening here with some other stuff in the works.
And do you have 3 boys, Andre?
I have 4 children. I have 4 sons. They're all upstairs, actually remarkably quiet right now. But yeah, I have a 1-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 9-year-old, and an 11-year-old.
Okay. Great. I know OBB has a really nice.
Yes, a very busy house for sure. Yeah,
and your wife is a writer as well. Yeah,
my wife is a writer. Wrote a New York Times most notable book in 2008, and yeah, she's been writing. Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, we worked at Per Se together. Best value wine. I read that. Sorry. Best value wine, I would probably say is our new wine, which is not on our website yet. That will come next week, called In Sheep's Clothing. It's our Washington State Cabernet.
Wait, what's it called?
It's called In Sheep's Clothing, and it's the first. It's been around for a while. Well, yeah, it's been around for a while, but it's the first time that we're actually selling it on our site. We're going to sell it on our site for a limited time only, and so that should be like next Wednesday, I believe.
Awesome. We'll check it out. Okay, so I'm so sorry. I'm like forgetting what I'm doing, and Israel's sending me text messages. So next week we have Stacy Rush, who is she is a personality on Fox DC. She does their morning news. She's amazing. She's going to share one of her favorite wines with us. I'm not telling you guys what it is. But next week is called BYOC, so bring your own cocktails. When we hang out during the after party, you guys are always mixing stuff up. So we're going to ask you, at least 5 of you, to share your favorite cocktails with us. Stacy's going to be the judge for the best cocktail contest. Can only have 4 ingredients. And then, of course, you're going to win a gift certificate to something fabulous. So that's next week. Also, the following week, we have cocktails and we have an appetizer. The 12th, do not miss, don't miss all of them, but the 12th, I'm going to send you the invite for the next 4 events tomorrow. Please register for the 12th early. When you register, please include your entire address, okay? Don't just say, you know, you got it from before. I need your full address. And if you have several people in your household, I need you to indicate that as well, okay? So that's all I'm saying to you. Do not wait to register for the 12th. Do it early, and I need your full address. We have some surprises coming for you. Okay, so of course I forgot this. You guys are support us every week if you can. Israel has my Venmo, Zelle, Cash App. Please continue to support Shall We Wine. We love Cocktail Hour. We're going to keep Cocktail Hour free for as long as we can, and we appreciate all of your donations. That is all I have. It's time for the after party. Unmute yourselves and talk. Okay, did I forget anything, Israel? Israel's gone.
Did not, you're good.
Okay, all right. Thank you, guys. Fred, Ken, Danielle.